Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And I think people are noticing two news, you can say, that are it's going viral all over the internet. One piece of news is the death of little Ammar, who's about 9 years old. He's finally succumbed. Uh, he passed away yesterday, and what caused it now, obviously, I would simply say the Pakistani establishment, the Pakistani army, the judiciary as well, and obviously, very obviously, very directly, Maryam Nawaz and her family, PDM, the illegal government. They are all directly responsible for his death. I would say that they murdered the child in cold blood. He basically had an acute grief attack. This is, by the way, his medical report. So it was mentioned on his medical report that he suffered from acute grief attack. And although these people who are responsible for his grief and for his eventual passing away, they actually have the gall, the audacity to bark in front of us and once again play politics, and trying to make excuses. The fact remains that his father, because he was a PTI member, Farooq Ibad, because he is a member of PTI, and he was one of the prominent members who they decided to illegally arrest, basically kidnap, by falsely accusing him of being involved in the false flag operation that was done by the state managers themselves, the 9th May charade. They kidnapped him and they arrested him, they put him in jail, and not just jail, but they took him to military detention, which is against the law, against the constitution. And because of that, his son suddenly suffered hugely. He had this trauma, and since then he was hospitalized, and he's finally passed away. And on the other side, we have another news circulating about this pseudo journalist. He's basically one of those journalists who are not real journalists, but like, the mainstream media and the mainstream journalists. They're basically paid by politicians such as Nawaz Sharif and, Zardari and stuff. He's basically their mouthpiece. We have two major mouthpieces of theirs. One is Imran Khan. So every time Imran Khan speaks, understand that he's basically giving you a dictated form, a narrative of the establishment. And every time this person speaks, this Javed Chaudhry, who I seriously don't even know who listens to him, because I know I don't. When he speaks, you know that he's the mouthpiece for the Sharif family and Zardari family, but most especially the Sharif family. And he is suddenly barking about how it should be the state policy to just kidnap every single member of PTI. I mean, this boy has just died, and yet this man is so shameless that he is actually mouthing off about how every single PTI member should be kidnapped and forcefully made to disappear by the state, by the establishment. And he's saying that this should be the state policy. Why? Because all the cases made against them are obviously illegal, and the courts keep on throwing their cases out. And so, he basically is actually inciting state terrorism against the public. If this were somebody talking exactly the same words about Jews and Israel, the whole world would have come down on him the whole world would have just cracked his head open. But no, because he's talking about regular Muslims, regular Pakistanis, be they Muslims or non-Muslims, it doesn't matter, as long as they're Pakistanis. So as long as he's talking such, he's inciting such violence and hate. So now suddenly there's no case to be made against him. There is no charge of treason against him. The whole world is suddenly pretending he didn't say a word. That shows the sheer hypocrisy of the Western world that created this chaos in Pakistan and now are pretending as if they have nothing to do with it. And it shows the sheer hypocrisy of their dogs that they've let loose here, who are traitors right down to the core. As I've said before, Pakistan was long before taken over by traitors, and these are their descendants. So these are those ass lickers. They licked the asses of the British, and now they're licking the asses of the British minions, the Americans. And this ass licking will go on from generation to generation because they are tied by a slave contract after all. What do you expect from them? So, be they in the establishment, be they in the judiciary, be they in the army or the so called bureaucratic machinery, be they in the pseudo political parties, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they're just ass lickers and dogs, sellouts and bitches that you can, there's no other way to take care of such people except to draw and quarter them, hang them, and kill them. Now, that is what people need to talk about. They need to talk about how the public of Pakistan really needs to now go and kill every single one of those people who are in the establishment, in the army, especially the chief of army staff. They need to kill every single member of the Sharif family and the Zardari family. They need to kill every single member of their political parties. They need to kill every single member of the PDM and of the caretaker governments, every single one of them. That is the only way Pakistan can be steered back to sovereignty. There is no other way. I'm sorry. Now, that is something that people need to think about. I know people actually think about it and people are gearing up for it. But because, as I said, as Pakistan doesn't have the history of actually fighting. We got our land fairly peacefully. The bloodshed that occurred after we got Pakistan. But Qaid-e-Azam, in his own right, he just created Pakistan on paper, constitutionally, as a constitutional expert, as a lawyer, and as a person who was quite wise enough to be able to map out two new countries, well, one new country which later on turned to two new countries, which originally was his intention of two new countries anyway. So the point is he managed to map out a new country peacefully. So Pakistanis do not have a history of actual revolution, of actual, violence against state. They have never had to fight aggressively, basically. And that is why, Pakistanis, this is exactly what the US and the traitors are taking advantage of. And this is why Pakistanis need to change themselves. They need to revolutionize themselves. They need to become more aggressive. They need to become more violent towards the state managers, especially since the state managers have committed treason against the state. And remember, we, the public, are the state. We are the real state. So now we come back to little Ammar and a little more about him. Why Justice for Ammar has gone viral, why his death has incited anger, and why people are questioning and even wondering that if the core of Pakistani nation doesn't get shaken by his death, then we really are a dead nation. Why? Because look, the little boy, like many other kids like him, many other PTI members, their family members, they have all gone through this. They've all gone through this trauma, this suffering, where their wives get taken, their children get taken, their parents get taken. And this little boy, he saw not just his father get taken, but he saw how the police came, illegally raided his house, how the police ruthlessly took his mother and his grandmother, how they behaved with them. So that is when he got the attack, that is when he got the trauma and he fell ill. you are supposed to be a minor's protector. You, the police, are supposed to protect the people, but you, the police, are committing treason again against your own people. Now the police are suddenly so scared that they're being told to go without their uniforms and to, move in plain clothes. Why do you attack innocent citizens in the name of politics? Why are you being politicized? Why are you allowing yourself to be politicized? Because you people never entered the police force through merit. That's why. Because a huge number of the police force are not on merit. They're those who were put there, parachuted there, bribed into there. They used their connections, they used money, they used land, they used bribery, they used blackmail, they used so many ways to put unwarranted, unqualified people in the law enforcement agencies. Why? So that they could use them today. So you see, the reason why I keep on and on saying that the people of Pakistan are actually responsible for whatever is happening to them, because they let this whole chain continue unbroken for 30, 40 years. When Nawaz Sharif and Zardari came to, again and again, first one, then the other, then one, then the other, they just came one after the other, again and again, taking over like a tag team, literally tagging each other. Okay, you next. Okay, you next. They were coming here to put all these pieces into place to ensure a smooth result, to ensure complete control over all the organizations when time comes. And that time has now come, and they have taken over and they are controlling these organizations. And we let them do it by remaining silent for 30, 40 years. Before anybody starts to, be a hypocrite and play the but the Jewish are right game here, let me tell you one thing. It is a fact, and it will be a fact that will be released in the next few years, as all the facts that I've ever mentioned before. And whenever people have tried to argue with me and tell me that I'm wrong, after just a few years, America declassifies its documents, and I'm proved right. So here's another fact, let me tell you. Before you try to say that no, it is this and no, it is that, all this whole situation that is created, this deliberate attack and harassment on women, on children, on older people, on the elderly, in other words, and on family members of PTI members. This whole deliberate harassment, violence, aggression, and attack, kidnapping, sexual harassment is simply directly under the orders of Maryam Nawaz. Understand this. Maryam Nawaz directly gave these orders. And who gave these orders to Maryam Nawaz? The American government. You can see, as I've said it time and again, you can see the hidden hand of America, because these things have never been done. These things are not part of our society. They're not part of our culture. If you can understand, this is something, that is why people keep on and on saying that this is not us. Why? Because even in the worst of dictatorship times in Pakistan, no women, no children, no elderly were ever touched. It was deemed to be the lowest of the low. You had to be the lowest of the low to do such a thing. And nobody ever dared to do such a thing. And especially not openly. Especially not like this. This is an American pattern, as you can see. This is very clearly an American and an Israeli pattern that you can see. This is something that Israel taught India to do in Kashmir. And they actually trained the Indian army to do in Kashmir. And then they worked with Pakistani army, and they made our army and our law enforcement and our intelligence agencies to do this to us. But again, that does not allow our agencies and our politicians to evade or eschew their responsibility. No. They are equal parts responsible for even agreeing to do such a thing. The fact that they do not believe in God is very obvious by the way they have been behaving. towards their own people, the fact that their god is money, and they do not believe in the hereafter, they do not believe in accountability, they do not believe in justice, they do not believe in hell and heaven, and they believe that once they are dead there's nothing ahead. And that belief is very obvious in the way they're behaving, in their attitude. And they know that what they're doing is that they have gone to a point of no return, which I keep on saying, and there will be no forgiveness. If they think that they will somehow manage to get things back to normal, that will never happen. The people of Pakistan will never forget this. They will never forgive this. And the people of Pakistan have, shed the myth, that myth that the establishment and the army had about how nobody would ever be able to touch them or go against them, and that they are all-time favorites. Yeah, that myth is broken. The people of Pakistan are very openly anti-establishment, very openly anti-army, anti-government, and anti-judiciary at the moment as well. Why? Because the judiciary, as I said, is largely responsible for allowing these people to come into play, and then the judiciary is incompetent. It cannot even fight against them properly. And the judiciary has been so incompetent, it could not ensure the safety of those people who were illegally kidnapped and detained by the military and by the establishment, by the intelligence agencies. And which, as a result, has caused the death of Ammar due to severe depression. And it has caused it has caused trauma to other children who are probably going through acute grief syndrome as well. You don't know what the other children have gone through or are going through. The fact that even the doctors, and even other people, concerned people, even in the school and everywhere, it has been put to evidence that this child is so grief stricken because he was so attached to his father that he just kept on calling out for his father. And according to the doctors, if only he would be allowed to just see his father and spend a little time with him, then he might have gotten better. And knowing that the judiciary was incompetent, they could not get his father back to him. The army showed its true colors as dogs of America, because you have to be dogs of America or any other country in order to commit treason against your own people, in order to bite your own master. So we are the real masters, but we are being bitten, which means that the real master is somewhere else. The fact that Maryam Nawaz, after going on a killing spree and after committing genocide and encouraging and inciting violence and aggression and hate and division amongst her people, which is the British way. So again, that's why you see the hidden hand of America, because America is following the British divide and rule formula. And suddenly Maryam Nawaz runs away with 4 huge trunks, huge enough to have 2 bodies per trunk. With all the illegal gains and the plunder and the loot that she's taken with her to England, after inciting all of this, she's run away to England. Why doesn't she have the guts now to face us? And Nawaz Sharif is going around barking about, he's such an asshole, seriously, and he's such a moron that he actually thinks that if he mimics Imran Khan, and if he creates the slogan that I'm anti-establishment, then he would gain Imran Khan's vote and popularity. He is absolutely wrong. First of all, everybody knows that he's the establishment's dog, and the dog in turn is he's a lap dog of America, and then he feeds all that pork that America sends. He keeps a large portion of that pork with himself, and he feeds the rest to the army and the intelligence agency, the law enforcement agencies, his politicians, and the establishment. So, he is their dog, they are his dog, and he is America's lap dog. So it is just a vicious circle here. And he actually thinks that people are going to believe him when he talks against the establishment. The people are not just against the establishment, the people are against the establishment because of Nawaz Sharif. Thank you very much. The people are against Nawaz Sharif, they're against Zardari, they're against the establishment because the establishment licked Nawaz Sharif's ass. People are against the army because the army licked Maryam Nawaz's anus. Okay? And because they are against the law enforcement agencies, because who knows how many of them probably had secret fucks with Maryam Nawaz and the other female members of the Sharif family and Zardari family. Who knows? Okay, because these are prostitutes of the highest order. We don't know how many sexual favors they've given and to whom. In order to make them, listen to them when they have no authority, no political standing, no authority, and yet they're giving orders and people are listening to them. Yeah, so I'm sorry, but I am going to be very explicit because facts are facts, and sometimes these are sometimes you cannot use beautiful words to describe a spade, okay? Sometimes you just have to call a spade a spade. So yeah, I'm just marveling at this whole scenario. Everybody's marveling at this whole scenario of how Nawaz Sharif is again beginning he's displaying his morality in front of us, and he's actually just making us all the more angry. In fact, I'm sure majority of us are thinking of different ways of how to kill him before he even reaches Pakistan. We're at that point. Even if we have to destroy a portion of Britain in our in our efforts to destroy that man and his family, I think Pakistanis would find a way to do that. Okay, so in all this mix, what about Imran Khan? That's what many people are probably thinking. Number one, listen, the establishment, although they're pretending to be, such egotists and narcissists, and they're acting as if, they're just bluffing, acting as if, they don't need Imran Khan and all. But the truth is they are actually literally down on their knees in secret begging Imran Khan to make a deal with them, and he's refusing it. They even had a meeting with the president, Dr. Arif Alvi, basically trying to probably encourage him to help them strike a deal with Imran Khan, and everybody knows that's not going to happen. So what is there for Imran Khan? Basically, Imran Khan, his vote bank is just increasing day by day. I think within these last 24 hours alone, they have increased tenfold. He's got about 2 million more votes. So he's gained 2 million more votes in just these last few days, you can say. And that means that if there is a free and fair election, he would win, and this time he would win with an overwhelming majority, as in he would literally sweep the whole parliament as well. And the problem that he had the last time round of not having 2/3 majority, that problem would be solved. But again, that problem would have been solved the last time round. But the last time, what happened is we know that there was a partial rigging to ensure that he couldn't get 2/3 majority, so that he could just remain more or less a puppet, and they could tie his hands down. So it would be even more dangerous for the treacherous establishment, the treacherous army, the treacherous law enforcement, and all these PDM a-holes. It would be even more dangerous for them if there occurs a free and fair election. And so, as we know, Zardari had already begun his rigging game. Nawaz Sharif on the other side was beginning his own method of rigging, which was more tagging the establishment and the army, as always, to do his dirty job. So yeah, that's why actually people are not going to vote mostly if the elections do in fact occur. So why? Because number one, we know that there is again going to be rigging, and we want to see what they can do if we refuse to vote. We would love to see where they produce all those fake votes from, which they have done before many times, a million times. That is the only way Nawaz Sharif and Zardari have ever won any elections, even Benazir Bhutto, sorry to say. But they have always only ever won the elections through rigging and through falsifying vote counts and through fake votes. And the army always had a huge role to play in it. So this time, again, if the elections do actually happen, and which President Arif Alvi was saying that it would be best in everybody's best interests to have all the elections in one day, instead of doing it section by section. But in any case, no matter how the elections happen and no matter when they happen, people are not going to vote, especially if Imran Khan is not going to be a participant, number one. Number two, even if he is a participant, a large number of his followers and voters may choose not to vote because, again, they do not trust the system. They do not trust the state managers. They do not trust the judiciary. You understand? So, on paper, Imran Khan stands at a very good place, but in reality, he and the rest of us, we are all on one side, and we have got a handful of traitors on the other side. And Imran Khan alone cannot fix this shit, really. And I think that people need to stop expecting him to fix their shit. One man cannot clean up the feces worth of 50 years, seriously, or 30 years, or even 40 years. And if you talk about collective shit, it's as old as 70 years. One man cannot clean 70 years worth of feces. You just have to uproot the whole commode, you have to uproot the whole plumbing system, you have to uproot the whole bathroom and make everything all over again. And here's a good point pointed out by one of the senior journalists, Sami Ibrahim, that which is worth really thinking about. He points out the hypocrisy that you catch the Indian spy Abhinandan and you can get him seated in a civilized way and give him a cup of tea and make him feel at home. But you couldn't send an innocent man on whom you have, you've just illegally detained, and there are no charges proven against him yet. He's innocent until declared guilty. And the courts are not even, according to the courts, there is no real case against him. And there's, he hasn't even been to trial yet. And you couldn't even let him see his son, not even on his deathbed. That if that doesn't scream treason and hypocrisy, I don't know what does, really. I would straight out call it hypocrisy. I would straight out call it treason. That you treat your own citizens like this, and you treat an enemy state's spy in a different way, which obviously again reminds us of what happened to Canada and India, as Canadian Prime Minister accuses the Indian government very openly of sending a spy, of sending one of their raw agents to Canada to commit murder. Now, the Canadian Prime Minister, I would really love to know what help he gets with this. Will America, will Britain, will Australia help the Canadian Prime Minister get justice for his citizen? Or will they also make a liar out of him and side with India? Because after all, right now they have very, very important operations going on within India, both against Pakistan as well as in preparation to against Russia, and in the future, in the near future, against China, using Kashmir as their base. So India is basically preparing occupied Kashmir to be their base. So what's going to happen there? What are we going to see? I would really love to know that. Now, here also I'll cite the irony and the hypocrisy, which is something that I've cited previously in my podcast. So I'll try to make it a little more clear here. So basically, Canadian government did not confront the Pakistani illegal government on the illegal kidnap and detainment of citizens of in Pakistan who actually are also Canadian citizens. Neither did the American government. In fact, they both basically worked with our establishment, and they let them get away with it. As we know, the granddaughter of the former Chief of Army Staff, Janjua, she is still detained and she's an American citizen. The only country that actually took up the matter, and not just for dual citizens or Australian citizens, but for Pakistani citizens and their rights, is Australia. Australia is the only country that has ever been vocal about what happened to Imran Khan, about what's happening to the people of Pakistan. But Britain, obviously, because Britain is behind it, America is behind it. So Britain and America just allowed their citizens to be tortured, to be sexually harassed, to be detained, to be kidnapped, to be forcefully disappeared. And Canadian government as well did nothing. There are many dual nationals here who have Canadian nationality, and many, in fact, a huge majority of them are PTI members or PTI voters or supporters. And again, you never saw Canada come forward. And as I said, when it's us and you ignore the issue, and you try to just you try to turn a blind eye and pretend it's not happening, then next it will be your turn. So Maryam Nawaz orders the assassination of veteran journalist, investigative journalist Arshad Sharif, and it happens all the way in Kenya with the direct involvement and cooperation of the CIA. So the ISI and the CIA worked together and assassinated the man in Kenya, all the way in Kenya. And obviously everybody was quiet. Nobody took the matter up. Obviously America wouldn't take the matter up. No other country talked about it. And obviously that gave India the guts to do the same. They decided to send their agent all the way to Canada to kill somebody who they thought was a danger to their own government, because he was a Sikh. And obviously because Sikhs are fighting, they have always been fighting for a separate state. And if they had actually worked with Quaid-e-Azam that time, like the Bengalis did, they would have had their own state. But that time they betrayed Quaid-e-Azam, and later on they betrayed the people of Pakistan as well. They were the ones who committed all that bloodshed against Pakistanis who were migrating to Pakistan from Punjab, from India. So that time, the Sikh community, the Punjabi people of India, that time they refused, at the 11th hour, they refused to work with Jinnah. And well, now they are regretting their decision big time. Now they are probably wishing that they had actually worked with him, and they would have been a separate state today. But now they're in this eternal struggle of, fighting for their own state against India. And because of that, India thinks that anybody who supports or gives any form of support, or any refuge to the Sikh people, the Sikh community, that person is India's number one enemy. And that is why India has been behaving very badly towards the Canadian Prime Minister, who has basically been pro-Sikh in his in his entire this is basically, you can say, his entire take on India's politics and on India's Punjab and its politics. So he's basically regarded as a supporter of the Sikh community, as a supporter of the freedom fighters of Punjab, India's Punjab. That is why, he is the eternal enemy of Modi and Modi's government. And so, now when Modi actually gets an agent to go and kill, an alleged national interest danger, because he happened to be Sikh, and although he had migrated to Canada years ago, and, he's a Canadian citizen, or I should say he was a Canadian citizen because now he's dead. So, I mean, obviously, now Canada can do nothing about it. And obviously, nobody's now going to, at least not from our side, because we are so busy with our own problems. I doubt anybody from Pakistan is even going to bother with what happened in Canada or to a Canadian citizen. Why? Because the Canadian government did not bother about its own citizens in Pakistan. Okay? So it's funny. It's funny how suddenly the Prime Minister of Canada has a huge problem with how a Canadian citizen was killed on Canadian soil, when it didn't seem to have any problems about how Canadian citizens are being tortured and detained illegally in Pakistan. So, what's the point of having a Canadian passport if the Canadian government cannot protect its citizens? What's the point of having an American passport if the American government literally discriminates amongst its own citizens? And if it was a white-assed American, then they would, forget, they would say screw red tape, and they would go through all lengths and jump through all hoops just to get those people protection. But if it is a black American, or if it is an Asian American, then, to hell with them. It doesn't matter what happens to them in another country. I mean, that is discrimination. So why would you spend all that money and effort and investment in these countries when their governments are going to discriminate against you at the end of the day anyway? They take your money, they take your hard work, they take your youth, they take everything, and they just give you a passport, and then they can't even protect you because suddenly you're no longer, their problem if something happens to you, God forbid, in another country. Or, look at the irony here, look at the hypocrisy here. So as I said, Canada, it's your turn now. You need to face it. We're facing it. You weren't there to protect your people here in Pakistan. Well, you couldn't even protect somebody in your own country, so I guess your passport isn't worth much, is it? So I think I've given a lot of, points that are, food for thought. Just think about them. Just consider them objectively. Okay? Because I do believe that one always has to be objective. That is the only way one can actually understand the core issue behind a problem, and then once you know what actually has caused a problem, what's behind a problem, then you know how to solve it the right way. And the core issue here is that you cannot be a hypocrite. You cannot, choose, when to be, moral and when to be, morally blind. You cannot say that if it's happening in Palestine, it's okay because, the Jews have an excuse. They don't, number one. Number two, again, the British are behind it. The British have created this bloodshed in Palestine. And so did America. America continued to finance it, right? And so you cannot say that, the Jews are right, but the Indians are wrong. And the Pakistanis are wrong, but the Indians are right. And Canada is right, and America is right, and Australia is right, and Britain is right. You can't do that. Okay, you have to just sit down and realize that your governments have been discriminating against other countries and their governments, that your governments have been interfering with other countries, which will obviously give the right to other countries to interfere with your countries and your governments, because that is definitely going to happen one day. Okay, today India has shown that it can do it. What's going to stop Pakistan if Pakistan suddenly, just turns the tables around, and if Pakistan gets back on its feet, and if Pakistan decides to hell with everybody, and if Pakistan becomes so powerful, which it was meant to be originally, then if Pakistan suddenly decides, okay, you know what, America has always been interfering with us. I think it's about time we do the same now. It's about time we change some of the key players within the American establishment so that they should work according to Pakistani's national interest. How would you like that? And it will happen, as I said, it will one day, it will happen. Why? Because what goes around comes around. America cannot continue to interfere with other countries without consequences, and American citizens need to bear that in mind. Similarly, Canadian government that was discriminating against its own citizens who are being tortured in Pakistan, now it suddenly is giving voice to an Indian Canadian killed on Canadian soil, and the Indian government doesn't give a rat's ass about it, so nobody's listening. Similarly, when things will go bad in America, nobody is going to come forward. In fact, by the time things go absolutely bad in America, nobody will even want to go forward and help America. Not even India, not even that very India that America actually turned into this huge global market. India is very good at backstabbing. India will obviously cite its own national interest, as it should, and it will, stab America in the back, and it will turn away. It will not be there for America when America will be drowning, which it will, because, as I said, what goes around comes around. It's your life cycle. That's how the world works. So similarly, all those countries that have been actively involved in interfering with other countries will be interfered with at one point. India has been constantly interfering within Pakistan as well. And that is why America may think that because we're working with India on this joint operation against Pakistan and against Russia and against China, we're going to be, bonded tightly. Yeah, no. When the time comes, India is going to throw you away, just the same way that you have thrown your allies away. So this is something that people really need to think about, and this is and also another thing that people need to understand, and people, I don't know why they refuse to understand it despite historical evidence. We have the real power because we're large in numbers. It is impossible for a larger number to be defeated by a smaller number unless it wishes to. When we choose to let a small number of people act as wolves and we prefer to be sheep, then we are running towards our own demise. But the day we decide to bite those wolves in the behind, those wolves will not even be able to do anything about it because we are larger in numbers. There is a reason why we say majority is authority. So I cannot believe that the population of America or the population of Pakistan or the population of India cannot subdue their own governments if need be. It's impossible. In the old ages, when there was no technology and there was no communication, and by communication I mean no easy modes of communication, in those days people could do it. So why can't we do it in today's global age of digital technology, of information technology, of vast communication modes? Why can't we? That's what I want to know. So this is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.